think we'll get started. So welcome to Azure Active Directory, best practices from around the world. Thanks so much for coming to the last session of the day right before the party. You could have easily been at a bar pre-gaming or thinking about the funny picture you want to take with the minions or the transformers. I'm Mark Morzinski. I'm a program manager on the identity division. I'm up here with Tarek Daoud. Yeah. That's the last time he will be quiet the entire presentation, by the way. So we're on a team that basically works with customers on their deployments, and we take the feedback from these deployments and bring them back into the product. So everything we're going to talk about today is lessons we've learned from actual deployments with customers. So we're going to talk about things that we've learned that you can accelerate your deployment, as well as things that you can avoid that will slow you down. We're going to do a little bit of a deep dive on a few technical areas so that you guys can kind of frame it up, as well as if we have some time at the end, we want to get some of your feedback as well on how your Azure AD deployments are going. So Tarek's going to get us started here talking about sync and authentication.
Thank you, Mark. So good afternoon, everyone. We're the last thing between you and happiness. So welcome, first and foremost. Quick question to people in the room. How many of you have Office 365? Raise your hand. Keep them up. How many of you have Azure Active Directory? There you go. It's a trick question. You all have Azure Active Directory. Most of you got it. Good job. So for those of you who don't know, Azure Active Directory is the identity system underneath Office 365 anyways. That is the most free and most basic version of Azure Active Directory is there. You can even create an Azure Active Directory without Office 365 if you go to the Azure portal. So first piece we're going to talk about is the sync and authentication. I'm the good guy here. I'm the guy, the free guy. Everything I'm going to talk about today is free, or almost most of it. He's the guy who's going to talk to you about the premium and EMS features. So we believe in sync and auth as being the foundation of how you bring your stuff to the cloud. Azure Active Directory is not a generic STS broker that's just throwing around tokens. We'd really like you to synchronize your users over to us, your groups. We'd like to know as much about your existing on-prem environment before you get you started with the cloud, because it helps us do a much better job. We'll give examples of this as the talk progresses. So first step is sync. Get your stuff in the cloud. So this is an example of a problem we're going to discuss later, but some of the best practices around sync that we were going to talk about are coming in a bit. The slides are out of order, I apologize. So basically, we're going to talk about some basic do's and don'ts of sync. So first lesson is, first and foremost, plan your sync and plan your upgrades of sync. So how many of you have more than 50,000 objects in your Active Directory on premises today? The majority of you, as expected. When you verify a single domain, you bump your limit in Azure Active Directory to 300,000. So if you're just a free Active Directory, Azure Active Directory customer create directory, you can put up to 50,000 objects, and then you hit a limit. So first thing is plan your size, and part of planning your size is if you verify a domain, you go up to 300,000. If you need to go further than that, anybody here with more than 300,000 objects in your on-premises directory, groups, users, contacts, devices? A couple. And so for you guys, you call support, and they bump it up further. It's a well-known process for support. So part of that is plan your upgrades. So if you're above a certain size, in-place upgrade, which AD Connect does by default, or if you have some customizations in your rules, auto upgrade will not happen. AD Connect will say, you've got some custom configuration, I'll let you upgrade. And so you have to think about how you're going to do it. Are you going to do it in place, which means you just run the new version of AD Connect. It upgrades the existing version. It might do a full import and full sync after that, which may result in an outage of a couple of hours if you're a 50,000 plus customer, right? Versus, am I going to do parallel boxes? So I'm going to keep the existing sync running as is. I'm going to bring the new bits on a new sync, run it in staging mode, read-only mode. And then when I'm ready, I'm going to switch over. And maybe there's a difference of a delta sync cycle, so that's like 30 minutes. Nobody will detect that. Am I going to document my configuration of AD Connect? So today, unfortunately, because the sync is run from the client box, the sync configuration is not preserved in the cloud. So one of the things you should do, especially if you're a large organization, is save your configuration. And we have a link to a tool that allows you to save your configuration in sync and basically export it to the other box when you're ready to deploy it there. Do enable Azure AD Connect Health, ADFS Health, ADDS Health. So we have these pieces of these health components to watch the health of your authentication pipe. So whether you're doing whether you're doing sync plus pass-through auth. How many of you heard about pass-through auth? Hopefully, not enough hands. So that is the big announcement in this year's Ignite is now we have a third method of authentication to the cloud other than password hash sync and ADFS, which is pass-through auth, which allows us to pass the authentication straight down to your domain controller without you syncing the passwords or building an ADFS farm of any type. Very interesting, especially for those of you starting on your journey today. So keep that in the back of your mind. Pass-through auth. So whatever the method of authentication you choose, we give you these these health tools that watch your sync box, your ADFS box, your domain controllers to alert you if there's something wrong with them, so that you can go to Azure AD portal and see one dashboard for the health of your authentication pipeline. Not just cloud stuff, but on-prem ADFS is down and nobody's able to access, but the cloud is green. So we try to show you this, that there is more, that the health of your entire pipeline. ADFS health, for those of you who don't know, watches the health of the ADFS box, can do cool things like alert you when there's a lot of failures on your logins. Very, very useful. It recently helped one of our customers detect that there was an attack on their ADFS server because they didn't have the lockout enabled, so it helped them detect it. ADDS health watches the health of your domain controllers. Do sync what you need. Do not sync what you don't need. So use scoping filters, OUs, domains, filter out the stuff you do not need. The more you sync to the cloud that you don't need, it just makes processing your tenant more slow. So if you have dynamic groups, you have other things configured in Azure Active Directory, they will be slower for no reason. So try and scope it to what you care about in the cloud. Use the consistency GUID. That's the diagram that we'll talk about, that we'll go back to. Those of you who are, especially large enough enterprises, in my opinion, anybody above 20,000 should really think about this. AD Connect is starting to do it out of the box for newer versions, but if you have an older version, this is a deployment configuration. This hyperlinked phrase is an article about how you can set it up yourself without going to the newest version of AD Connect. The whole concept of the consistency GUID is that you use something other than the default that AD Connect comes out of the box with, which is Object GUID. The main problem with Object GUID we'll discuss in the diagram is that it does not, when you have a multi-forest scenario and objects move between forests, it doesn't work very well. And as much as your CIO promises you that these new acquisition, we will never move anybody across the forest, they always move. So it's best to be prepared. Don't forget about Coda. We just talked about it, the 50K, 300K, and then call support. And don't forget about pass-through auth. That was the public service announcement I just made earlier. For those of, how many of you heard about seamless SSO, that other thing in this? Almost as many, good. So the two go hand in hand very well together, and also seamless SSO works with password hash sync. What seamless SSO gives you is that one awesome factor that ADFS had over password hash sync always, which was, if I'm in the domain inside the corporate network on a domain joined machine, and I go to portaloffice.com, and I type Tariq@contoso.com, and I hit tab, I'm magically signed in, right? I get redirected to ADFS. ADFS does Windows Integrated Auth. Poof, magic. Users love this thing, right? With a seamless SSO, you get the same experience with password hash sync and PTA, pass-through auth. So it's a very cool thing you should really deploy. Again, free, 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 free. Nothing paid here so far. He's going to charge you when he gets to his section.
That's right.
Again, opposite point, don't have to use ADFS. There are competitors out there and hype out there that ADFS is Microsoft demands that you deploy ADFS, you have to deploy it. We're telling you right now here under Ignite, I am an employee of Microsoft, that you don't have to use ADFS. You don't have to deploy it. You don't have to be successful with it. There are scenarios where you need it, And there's a beautiful article. If you click on the pass-through auth article and go there, there's actually a nice table that says when do you have to use one or the other. And the only compelling reason for ADFS right now is if you have an on-prem MFA provider or on-prem something that you basically, after authentication, the first factor, you want to go check something else and then come back and then go to Azure AD and say yes or no. And so other than that, we really think you can move off of ADFS. And of course, the SaaS integrations of ADFS, we'd like you to move them to Azure AD. Yes, of course. So don't sync with the domain admin and enterprise admin credentials. How many of you are old enough to remember DirSync? So most of you. So there was a little trick we played on you guys. If you guys remember, DirSync in the first dialog would ask you for the cloud admin credentials. And in the second dialog would ask you for the enterprise admin credentials. And then it would use the cloud admin credentials to sync to the cloud. And it would use the enterprise admin credentials to create a sync account on premises. AD Connect started off in a little tricky way and asked you, give me your on-prem sync account. But a lot of our users, unfortunately, kept putting in their enterprise admin account. So AD Connect was using their enterprise admin account to sync. So that's one thing you have to watch out for. Now AD Connect actually asks you for an enterprise admin account in the express path. And in the advanced path, it asks you for the sync account. So pay attention to actually what it's asking you for. And then the other thing is now when we collect your cloud admin account credentials, we use them to create a sync account in the cloud as well that's only able to do sync and not everything. So just watch out for this one. So I'll go back to the diagram and talk about the consistency GUID real quick. So back. So in the olden days, without consistency GUID, this is the typical config of DirSync or AD Connect. We use object GUID. So you've got your forest, the blue guys, they sync to the cloud. You acquire the pink guys, they sync to the cloud. These are their object GUIDs respectively. Then one day the unpredictable happened, the unexpected happened. They promised you they would never do it, but then they did it. They said, Bob now has to move from forest A to forest B. And so they moved him over, and now he has a new object GUID. Next sync cycle, he's a DirSync error right away. Why? Because now he has the same UPN, same email address, but a different object GUID. We cannot reconcile those two things. So he conflicts with himself. The alternative is delete Bob in the cloud and then recreate him, but then Bob loses all his email and SharePoint rights and all that stuff. So to put yourself in a better position, in the AD Connect box at the bottom that says, what is your cloud source anchor? You can actually pick, this is the default one that AD Connect will create, or you can, back in the day, you had to create your own extended schema attribute and put it in. But basically, pick something other than the default one. In the blog, it shows you how to populate it yourself. The one that AD Connect uses, it will populate it on the way out. And so what that leads you to is this picture, which is when we have the same scenario with the second forest. The guys are there. Their consistency GUIDs are the second value, so that when they move over across, it doesn't matter because their consistency GUID is preserved. So they match up just fine. So that's the consistency GUID do and don't, or little deep dive that we're going to go into today. Highly desirable for anybody over 20,000 or anybody who works for a company that has, even if you're 2,000, but you have a history of acquiring and merging and being acquired, and in industry itself. These are some of the things you should up-level your conversations from identity and kind of talk to your CIO or your identity architect, or if you're the identity architect, ask these questions. When was the last time we were acquired? When was the last time we acquired someone? Because these things make you better at your job, is asking these higher level questions rather than simply talking at the level of the hashes and the tokens as well. So with that, I believe it's
still you.
Not still me, apparently.
One more.
One more, yes, the password hash sync learnings. Yes. So password hash sync. First thing is first. How many of you have password hash sync turned on?
Oh.
Like, for the record, 7. So, that is disappointingly low number. So how many of you would like to turn password hash sync on but can't? Security says no.
Still 7.
Still 7. Different 7. So for those who have security teams opposing their ability to turn on password hash sync, we are more than willing and happy to help you have these conversations. We have a white paper now out. I'll put it at the end of these do's and don'ts, which is right there. That link down at the bottom actually explains in the middle of the article how password hash sync works. It explains the talking points. A password hash is not the password. If you have the hash, you cannot come back to the password. We're not using a weak MD4 hash. We're using a very strong, very complicated, salted hash. It is fully described in the article. You can show it to your security guy and tell him, even if Azure AD is hacked, and they get the hashes out of Azure AD, they are useless. They can never reverse engineer them to get our passwords out of them. Don't worry about it. So that's the bottom line, is that if anybody's arguing that we'll never put our passwords in the cloud, your passwords are not in the cloud. It's the password hashes that are irreversible. This is basic computer science and math. Strong hashes are supposed to be irreversible. Now, why do you want to use password hashing? Why are we sad? We do not get compensated on the number of hashes in the cloud.
Not even a little bit.
Not even a little bit. But we are sad because it's a very strong, high availability feature and security feature. So how many of you attended Alex Weiner's identity protection talk? Shut the back door on the bad guys. Not enough. You should attend it. If you don't attend it, watch the recording. We have a very, very strong, one of the best in the industry. In fact, one of the top 2. It's us and Google. In the industry, identity protection team. These guys are really good. They're really smart. They're black hats and gray hats and white hats, former, and they all do this stuff all the time, full day. Machine learning algorithm trying to break in and trying to detect break-in. And they keep up on what the bad guys are doing all the time. And what they do, part of what they do is they acquire any credential leaks that get dumped in the cloud, the dark web, shady places. Sometimes law enforcement will say, hey, we caught this kid somewhere, and he had a laptop with a bunch of leaked Hotmail accounts. Here you go, guys. We run all these leaked credentials against our services, all our services, personal, Microsoft account, as well as enterprise. And if we find any of them, we flag them and we force them to reset their password. You are denying yourself that service by not syncing your hashes to the cloud. The number one way that your users are going to get loose credentials is phishing. Number 2 is credentials leaked from SaaS. So people are not going to go after Azure Active Directory or Facebook or Google. They're going to go after some small SaaS that 3 guys in your company use, and they're going to attack that SaaS vendor and going to break it open. They're going to get the credentials from there, do a password spray, whatever, until they get the credentials against that provider, and then they'll come and log into Exchange Online with the correct password. And you will not know about it, because they will redirect to ADFS, authenticate correctly, and come back unless you had some MFA, hopefully, or something like that to protect it. And so with password hashing, we can tell you right away, that guy's credential has been leaked. You need to reset his password. So very important security feature, but also high availability feature. So how many of you heard about WannaCry, Pydia, the whole ransomware thing that was happening in the spring, right? How many of you were impacted by it? It's okay, it's fine. It happened to the best of us. So we have a case of 2 customers in the UK. One customer had it on, one customer didn't. One customer turned it on 1 week before the attack, and one didn't. Both federated. And the one that did not, at the height of the attack, what did they have to do? Turn off their domain controllers, because they didn't want the attack to propagate through shares and all that stuff. The other guys did the same thing. One customer, their employees were using Yahoo and Gmail to email each other for a whole week. And one customer was able to continue using Office 365 just fine, because their password hashes in the cloud. All they had to do was switch from federated to managed, and the users were able to authenticate with the same credentials they used to, only different pop-up UI. So they were able to, this was a disaster recovery situation, if you think about it, that you can turn off your DCs, clean up your on-prem environment, and keep your SaaS functioning just fine. Think about that possibility. That was not possible before. A really cool thing. So again, highly, strongly encourage you guys to deploy it, free, and helps your safety. So those are the talking points, I believe, and please turn it on. Turn it on with seamless SSO. It will make your end user experiences much better, and they will feel like it's ADFS. Mark,
yeah,
over to you.
So I'm going to talk about conditional access real quick. So this is one of our more popular features, so I want to kind of maybe level set for those that have not actually deployed it yet. And we were trying to think of a good analogy that we could use to do this, and I had a SNL reference that nobody would get. So we settled on Batman's utility belt, and it really can do a lot with this tool. And you can do things like preventing access to your resources from locations you don't want people being able to log in from. And you can also do things where maybe it's okay that when your workers are home this Thanksgiving at their aunt's house, they can get their mail through OWA. But it's not okay for them to install Outlook and pull that mail down to your aunt's machine, which is probably running maybe Vista still, I don't know, something like that. And it allows you to manage your risk at a very granular level. And what I mean by that is, when you think about risk, sometimes it's this very large, encompassing risk policy you have in place. But with conditional access, you can set risk at a per group and a per application level. So what I mean by that is you could say maybe for this HR managers that have access to very sensitive data, if they have any risk on their account, we can block them. But if there is a regular employee and they have a little bit of risk, we can prompt them with MFA and we can let them get through. You can do that at a per application and group level. The next thing with conditional access is it reduces the user friction. We see a lot of customers when they deploy MFA, they enable it on the user object. And this does two things. First thing, it makes your users hate you and hate MFA because they get prompted for MFA every single time they log in. The second thing it does, it teaches them to keep hitting MFA anytime it comes up. So when the bad guy gets your username and password and they log in and their phone prompts them, they're like, I don't know what this thing's doing, click it, and the bad guy gets through. So this really teaches them the wrong behavior. Conditional access can really help reduce that prompt. But the other part of conditional access that's really important is it should be part of your overall DLP strategy. You can use this with Intune to protect the apps and what they can copy and paste. You can use this with Azure Information Protection, so when the data gets downloaded out of SharePoint, it's still protected. And some of our more advanced customers are using Windows 10 with Windows Hello for Business. There was a talk here, I think it was Tuesday, if anyone went to that. They talk about deploying Windows 10 Hello in the enterprise. Some of our more advanced customers are doing this, and it really allows you to get strong auth all the way through their environment because you're strong auth initially. So here's what this kind of looks like without conditional access. We have this user. She's going to click on a SaaS app. Maybe it's Office 365. Maybe it's a Google Apps. It doesn't really matter. It gets redirected to Azure AD. We don't know who this user is, so we have to authenticate her. We can use federation, ADFS, ping federate, doesn't matter. Maybe we're using pass-through auth. It doesn't matter for conditional access. And now that we know who this user is, we can only make three choices. Either you can block them, allow them through, or do MFA. That's it. It doesn't matter what app they went to, doesn't matter where they are, that's all we can do. When we have conditional access in the mix, we can do lots of granular policies. So we can do it from a browser or group level like I was talking about earlier. Maybe we have a device we trust or devices we don't trust. We can do it based on location, or like we said earlier, we can do it based on risk. So you can do all these at a per application level and a per group, and I'll kind of show you that here coming forward. And again, once that's done, we can then do block, allow, or do MFA, and the user gets into their application. So it's a much better user experience for your users. So when you start to actually think about deploying conditional access, there's a lot of really good pre-work that should force you to think about how you're going to do this. And you should really think about what is the policy we want for our user type. And most people jump quickly to their employees, and they write this policy, and it's good to go. But what about your contractors, and what about your business partners? And then when you layer on the device, do we have the same policy if it's a managed device or it's a BYOD? Do we want contractors to be BYOD, or do we only trust employees? This is the stuff you need to start thinking about with your security team and risk. And then you start layering on the network. Is it inside access or outside CorpNet? And then the application. Is it an HR app that's super important? Is it Exchange? Is it SharePoint Online where it's just your homepage? And then you think about the client type. We treat web differently than maybe a mobile app or a thick app like Outlook. And then what's the risk score going to be? And when you run through all 6 of these, you're going to hopefully spit out a nice matrix like this. If you've done it right, you will end up with something close to this in terms of all of the SaaS apps that you're looking at, as well as application proxy apps as well. And you can kind of build a conditional access policy based on what your grid is.
So I have a question for you guys. How many of you have ADFS used today with Office 365 Access? Show of hands, right?
Oh my goodness.
Nice. Now, how many of you have the GIM rule in your ADFS? The GIM rule is, we have all these complex rules about preventing unmanaged devices from accessing blah, 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 except if it's the CEO or the CFO GIM, just let him through. It's okay, you don't have to.
Can admit it.
So,
Yep.
so this helps you with the GIM. The GIM rule is really about the fact that iOS doesn't support this or that, so don't do cert auth in this flow. This allows you to say, if a user coming from a mobile device of this version, do MFA instead of cert auth. You can do these kinds of controls with that.
Yep. So this is what it looks like. If you have, who's still using the old portal? Thank God. OK, good. This should not be totally unfamiliar to you. So first, you can scope it by users. And notice here how we can also exclude users and groups. And I'll talk about that in a second. And then you pick which application you want to apply to. You can apply your policy to all apps, or you can exclude some apps, or do it be a specific app. And then we have our conditions. So this is where we have our browser type, our device platform, maybe if it's outside the corporate network, or if it's a web app or maybe a mobile app. And then we have our grant controls. So we can either block or grant access, and we can do require MFA, require domain join device, or require an Intune compliant device. And there's a little radio button at the bottom there that says require all or require one. And this is one of the direct feedbacks we got from one of our customers where they really wanted to say you either have to do MFA or come from a compliant device. So this is one of the good examples when we had the feedback back into the product from this. So this is really easy to set up. We'll kind of talk about some of this, but just kind of follow these prompts. All right, so do's and don'ts. First one, do use the Authenticator app. This is more of an MFA do than it is a conditional access do, but that's OK. If you have international employees, this will be your best performance by a lot. The second thing is the Authenticator app is a very special app. It has what's called a primary refresh token. And this primary refresh token is used to get ID tokens for other applications. You may hear people say access tokens, because people tend to play it a little fast and loose with ID tokens and access tokens, myself included. But it's actually an ID token. And it will reduce your user's prompts on their mobile device. So when the user logs in the first time to Outlook and they do MFA, and then they click on OneDrive, they won't be prompted, because the primary refresh token will be used to go get an ID token for OneDrive. Do exclude one admin account from the policy. This is one that our team had to learn twice. Someone put a conditional access policy on, and they hit save, and then they thought, oh, I can't actually meet that policy. I can't log into the portal anymore. And we did that twice. So if this happens to you, and it will, call support. They'll help you get squared away, or have an extra admin account that's not included in any of the policies. Do enable identity protection if you have that. This is a P2 feature, or EMS E5, but you get only prompted on risk. This really helps a better user experience versus always prompting them for MFA when they're at their home machine versus being on the corporate network, which is what people tend to do. So if you have this, absolutely use this. A lot of our customers have this, but they haven't actually deployed, and they're still just doing extranet MFA. Intranet is OK. But if you have this, it's a much, much better user experience. Don't underestimate the complexity of a hybrid CA. And what I mean by that is, every once in a while, I'll have a customer, we have some stuff in Azure AD that we want to do conditional access on, and then some stuff in ADFS or ping federate on. And we're going to let this one through up here, and then we're going to catch it at this level, or vice versa. And what ends up happening is you have to troubleshoot, why did I get MFA'd? And it's much, much harder. Or, even worse, why did something get through that we thought shouldn't get through? And that's because we have all these knobs on both sides, and it gets really, really confusing. We recommend putting everything in Azure AD. It's easier to manage from a policy perspective, but you also have all the extra security from an Azure AD perspective on it. Don't assume your users or business units will understand why we're doing this. MFA is kind of a thing that, I know it's a thing because my dad has now 3 IT computer tips. First tip, restart. Second tip, buy new. Third tip, put MFA on it. But your business units, if they don't understand why we're doing this, they're going to push back and push back hard. They'll say IT is getting in the way of what I'm trying to do. Why do I have to do this? Blah, 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 blah. So make sure you explain that we don't want to end up in the news. We're doing this for a security perspective, and take the time to actually do that. Don't forget about your last 5%, but don't block on them. So when you're going through an MFA deployment, you're going to find out that there was a part of your company that is not allowed to bring cell phones or doesn't have cell phones or something like that. One of our customers, a union in a European country, said that if I have to have a cell phone for work, you need to provide it for me. And in order to provide that, to do what you need me to do, I think our union will need a 256 gig iPhone 7 Plus in order to use the Authenticator app. So we're good on whatever color it is, but that's what we're going to need to do this. So you're going to find this. Don't block at them. Use the exclude while you're deploying MFA, because we see some customers that we spend 6, 8, 9 months having insane discussions about, well, what if the phone falls and it's broken and they're on a submarine and the Wi-Fi went out and I don't know how they're going to get in? While we're having that discussion, guess what happens? An account gets compromised. And then guess how fast MFA gets rolled out? The next Monday morning. So start deploying this, roll it out, use the include-exclude groups from your users, and start doing it now. Know how to debug your modern auth issues? This is a really cool tool that will help look at some of your credentials. All the 8-out tokens are stored in the credentials, Windows Credentials Store. This will help like clear the caches, all that kind of good stuff. And if you don't have, if you can't figure it out by then, you can also submit them to support right then and there and call support and have them help you work on that. And last thing here, also know how to debug your MFA authentications. You're going to get MFA prompts when you thought you shouldn't. You're not going to get MFA prompts when you thought you should. Knowing how to look for the inside CorpNet claim, or is it in the right trusted IP list, and being able to look at a fiddler trace to show when is MFA starting or not in your trace. So here you can see that the SAS begin auth, end auth is pulling for MFA. Self-service password reset. Has anyone deployed this? Awesome. OK, cool. So I'm going to cover one thing that everyone seems to get wrong. So we have this user. They're doing their SSPR gate. They write their password to Azure Service Bus. Azure AD Connect picks it up and sends it back to Azure AD, or sorry, back to AD. So what didn't happen, which everyone seems to think happens, is the password is written to Azure AD first and then written back to AD. It does not do that. It's written to on-prem Active Directory first, which is great, because any of your password history, your password age, that crazy password DLL that you put in on Server 2003 in your DCs and you don't know how to really get it out, so it's just going to be there forever, that all still applies. So the password's set there first. And then if it's successful or not, it goes back through Azure AD Connect back to Azure AD, and it tells the user this was successful or this was not. OK? So some do's and don'ts around this. The first one here, do your pre and post data homework. SSPR is one of the easiest things to show value on. So query your help desk, see how many password resets or account unlocks we had to do for the last 6 months. Then when we deploy SSPR, do the same query. And you'll probably see this dramatic drop of password resets to your help desk. And if your help desk is outsourced and you're paying per password reset, that's like some serious money you're going to save. So make sure you do this. Also, when you do your pre-work, this will help you get executive sponsorship. We sometimes have, I'm sure everyone has this in their environment, the long-running Hatfield and McCoy IT feud between multiple groups because someone did token ring instead of Ethernet way back when, and we'll never get along from there on going out. This will help cut through that kind of nonsense. They're like, this is what we're doing, and we're going to do it. Done. Use the staging to restrict access to password reset. This allows you to roll this out to your environment gradually. And you also want to require users to register when signing in. So when you have this on, when the user logs in, they get an interrupt that says, your admin requires some more information. Please fill it out. You guys can control what the gates are, all that good stuff. If you don't do this, the people have to go on their own in the My Apps portal to their profile and fill it out. You can guess how many people do that. None. So you need to do an interrupt. And it also works really well when you do this as a part of an app that you're deploying that everyone's going to use. So things like Workday or HR, maybe ServiceNow, SharePoint Online is going to be the new homepage for everybody. That's a real good time to attach this to it, and you can get your registration up while everyone's going there. Who here likes calling the Comcast RCN your cable provider? Does anyone like doing that? Does anyone like calling their help desk? Nobody? Oh, so what? Your end users hate it too. They hate this. I hate calling our help desk. I hate calling MSIT. It drives me crazy. So communicate this. Make a huge deal. This is like a huge thing you can do, like, hey, we've heard you, and you don't have to call the help desk anymore. You can do this yourself. Here's how you do it. And you can build your own portal for this. A lot of companies we have are doing this password@company.com. This is just a easy CSS website that has some links to the Microsoft site, the Microsoft registration docs. You can go ahead and do this. One of my customers was able to stand this up in 3 hours and push it out to their company. All part of their communication. It was really, really easy. We have this free Power BI content pack. And in there, it has what managers love: graphs and colors and numbers and arrows going up and arrows going down and all that good stuff. Make sure you use this. It will help you with your SSPR registration, like where you're at with your registration, but also will help you do that first point, which is provide your pre and post data homework. Last part, do not test with an admin account. The admin account policies are set by us. You have to go through 2 gates. You cannot use Q&A, and you shouldn't use Q&A anyways, but people will be testing this, and they'll say, I set for 1 gate for phone, and they keep getting their 2nd gate. They don't understand why. They're testing with an admin account. Don't do that. Test with your regular user account. OK, SaaS apps with Azure AD. So when you move stuff to Azure AD, now is a real good time to maybe declutter the things we're doing on-prem and the convoluted processes we have. So really use dynamic groups. They're super helpful for this. You can use dynamic groups for group-based licensing today, which is super helpful. But you can, as a user gets automatically synced to Azure AD, you can have them get put into a group and get access to an application. You can also use provisioning. So who here uses the Timothy API method to provision applications? We talked about this in our pre-day a little bit if you were there. Does anyone have a Timothy API that they use? Timothy API is like the guy up the hall named Timothy that when a new user gets hired, he fills out a CSV file, and then like it goes to some FTP site that only Timothy knows about. Does anyone have that? And then when like he goes deep sea fishing off the coast of Baja, California, like no one gets provisioned or deprovisioned from Salesforce for 12 days? We do provisioning as well for some of these apps. So this should be part of your SaaS app integration plan because you can now get rid of the Timothy API. It will automatically provision and also be deprovisioned from the SaaS app. As identity people, here is some new terminology you need to learn. This is just like learning how NTLM worked and Kerberos works. You need to understand what's the difference between IDP versus SP initiated. Does the application support one or both? What's the name, the SAML identifier going to be? What's the timeout of the page? And does it actually do single sign out? And you will learn that a lot of vendors don't know how this stuff works. We've seen many vendors that say, we support single sign out. And then you click sign out, and it says, congratulations, you've been signed out. And then you hit refresh. Oh, you're still signed in, because they actually didn't put a post back to the IDP. So do not assume that they actually know what they're doing, sadly. And you need to kind of understand this. This is like the new stuff from an identity perspective you should really understand. All the conditional access stuff I talked about totally applies to SaaS apps and really should. Don't just do conditional access for Exchange and SharePoint. Think about your HR app. Think about any of the apps that you're using in your environment. This one's for Javon. Push all of the apps that you use to get into the app gallery. This makes it a much better experience for everybody because when the app's in the gallery, you can click add. There's less to configure. One of my customers tells every single vendor that they need to get into the app gallery. And they get us on a phone, usually with Javon or someone from our team, and we get it integrated, and now everyone gets that benefit. So push your ISVs to get into the gallery. If you have an ISV that's not in there, you can go to this ak.ms link. It describes the process. It goes to Javon's phone. It wakes him up. He'll take care of it. I promise. He's super good. But do this. This is super helpful for everybody. Last one. Tarek kind of alluded to this because he didn't read my slides, but talk to your leadership about this. It's more than just a user experience. It increases your security posture greatly because your username and passwords are not being sent to all these SaaS apps where they're stored. We're just sending the claims. So not only are you getting a better end user experience, you're increasing your security posture. Now, if you think that that's not happening, We have some swampland we're willing to sell you, but also you can go to this website called Have I Been Pwned? And you put your email address in, and you can see where it shows up. And it's going to show up, because it always shows up. I think that's all I had for stats. Cool, yeah, so Tarek is up here for B2B.
Thanks, Mark. OK, and so I'm back with the free stuff, so partially free this time. So we're going to talk about B2B. How many of you attended the B2B Modern Collaboration session? Hey, great. So I'm not going to actually talk about how B2B works. You should go watch that session, or you can talk to Surat. He's right here if you want, afterwards. But just to level set for those of you who are not familiar, B2B is roughly, basically, currently there's a principal always created in your directory. So when you invite him to come collaborate with you, we create something in your directory first, and then we fire him an email, and then he redeems. So those are the two parts to it, the invitation and the redemption. The invitation means I want an object on my side. This allows you to ACL it, put this guy in a group, put him, assign apps to him, put attributes on them, so that when they finally redeem, they are fully garnished with all the things you want them to. And the redemption is their indication that they want to work with you. And then this video has a nice talk by Surat where they actually talk through the whole mechanics, and they actually demo the different parts of the redemption, the invitation, and so on. What I want to talk about is this, which is the controls. These are the controls you have on B2B. And it's important that you know what you have, because it's either you want to turn on B2B and there's somebody in your company who says no, or vice versa. Somebody in your company wants to turn on B2B and you're saying no. So let's look at it and see if we can hopefully get you both to say yes. This is the message we want you to know, that you have a lot of control over B2B and how it works. So there are 3 levels of controls I'm going to talk about, and I'm going to show an example of a 4th layer of control. The basic layer of control is the one at the bottom on top of the directory layer. There is a B2B invitation manager with directory level controls. We're going to talk about them in the next slide. Then in each workload, each of them has, some of the workloads have introduced their own B2B controls that have a meaning for their services, especially SharePoint and groups, because they're highly collaborative services that include a lot of collaboration with external partners. And then the 4th model we're going to talk about is Teams, where they used the knobs introduced by everybody else. They did not necessarily introduce new, which is a good thing, because it's not like every time a service from Microsoft comes up, you want to have 5 new knobs. And then everything else, like SaaS, everything else will be governed by the directory knobs down there. So directory knobs, these are the directory knobs. They are under the user settings section of the main Azure Active Directory blade. They are 4. The first one says guest user permissions are limited. This is a good thing. These are the defaults, by the way. So the blue, the yes, 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 yes are the defaults that ship out of the box for any customer. So make sure to check them. If you don't like anything I'm talking about here, you can always come in and turn it off. This one is a good thing. This says guest users by default can't read as much information of their own profile or everybody else's as a normal user can. That's a good thing, because otherwise they can read as it's like making a guest, an external user, a domain user. You give them all the default rights that other users have. The next one says admins and guest, inviters can invite. This one is a little sneaky, because no does not mean that admins and guest inviters cannot invite. It only means that guest inviters cannot invite. Admins can always invite. So global admins in Azure Active Directory, there's no button that says global admins can't do, because they can come back and turn off the button. So just clarifying that the meaning of this one is there's a new role introduced called guest admins, guest inviters, which is a cool way of delegating B2B invites to a lesser powerful role than global admins, something most of you ask us for all the time. So this is to turn on or off the ability of that role to invite if it got created. But of course, generally, if you don't want it to invite, don't give the role to someone. I would not suggest you turn this off. Members can invite. By default, this is yes. Generally, Microsoft posture is a highly collaborative one, and we hope our customers are as well. So we recommend that people encourage their end users to invite others and collaborate with them and so forth. We've seen models where the customers don't want that. They want to turn it off, and then they want to manage B2B invitation from something else. They'll buy Covision, they'll buy Savian, they'll buy something that will surface a portal for people to file a ticket to get approved by somebody who goes to somebody else who comes back and then issues the invite. So you can do that if you want. So this is the way to do it. You turn this off, and then you'd go write some app that uses the B2B Invitation Manager API, which is public and documented, and you would go down that path. But the default is that end users within, for example, SharePoint can collaborate and invite others from to documents. The last one is a little bit questionable. That one is the guests you invite can further invite other guests. And so it's very collaborative, obviously, but some customers obviously have concerns with that as well. So just letting you know, this is the default, it's a yes. So if you want to restrict it, you should come here. Next one is Office Administration Portal. This one has a knob of its own. I want you to pay close attention to the other small red highlights. So this one is the gear going to sharing, and then when you click on sharing, you get this pop-up that says members can invite or not. This looks highly familiar, right? This is the same as this button we just looked at in the previous slide. Members can invite yes or no. And if you turn that one off, you'll see this one get switched. If you turn this one off, you see that one get switched. Some of you may ask, why do you have two buttons to do the same function? Because this is such an essential one, specifically, that a lot of Office 365 customers were not aware it's in the Azure AD portal over there. So the Office team also surfaced it over here. Okay? And these are also PowerShell settings you can find. This one is a little sneakier. See, it's the same gear, but it's under services and add-ons. This one are the Office 365 controls for groups. So if you click on Office 365 groups, you have two settings. One is allowing external users to even be added to a group, and the other one allowing the group members to add them to the group, the group owners. I mean, you as an admin can always add anybody to your tenant and add them to any group you want, but this is allowing the individual independent group owners to invite B2B users to their groups. And so the default is it's on, and this, again, is the highly collaborative federal delegated model that we prefer. The second one is if you want it such that they only get the email, but they can't get to the content, they have to be explicitly invited for the content, you would turn the second one off. By default, if they are members of the group, they can access the group website, and they can see all the files in the group. So those are the two settings. So the one comment here is actually, it's a good reminder that that article in that help link right there shows you how you can turn them off for the whole tenant and then come and turn them on for specific tenants. So if you want certain groups to be collaborative, but the rest of the Office 365 group to be restricted, you can do that. It shows you how to do it in PowerShell. The opposite is not true. So you can't have it on for the whole tenant, and then certain groups are off, but this is true. And then finally, B2B controls within SharePoint. This, you get to this by going to the SharePoint Admin Center from the Office portal and then click on Sharing. You get this full list of controls. SharePoint has 4 modes of collaboration. The second one has a good synergy with the B2B invite solution I mentioned earlier, where you have some central B2B invitation manager system that invites all B2B partners to your tenant through some API. And then SharePoint will restrict sharing in SharePoint to only people who already exist, only B2B users already exist in the tenant. So if you as an employee want to invite Sue to collaborate with you, you go to the portal and invite Sue as a B2B partner, and then after she comes in, then you can find her in SharePoint and share a document with her. The second one is where basically SharePoint will do the invitation like B2B and will extend an invitation to the user, and the user has to redeem to get access to the document. The third one is very collaborative, which is basically kind of suffers from the golden ticket problem, because anybody with the link can open the document. So it is suitable for certain not very collaborative, not very secretive documents. Like, for example, hey, we're doing a fundraising drive for so-and-so, or who's signing up to clean up the park tomorrow? Here's a spreadsheet, please add your name. Maybe you don't need to secure that much. Anybody with the link can go there and edit the doc, right? But sensitive enterprise environment, it's not very cool. And then I wanted you to know that there is controls on whitelisting down there, additional settings you see down there. You can actually, in SharePoint, you can actually blacklist or whitelist the domains you want to collaborate with. So you can say, allow anybody, block everybody, and only allow B2B invitations or sharing invitations to go to @Condoso and Fabricam only, or the vice versa. I don't care, you can collaborate with anybody in the world you want, but I don't want my employees to accidentally share documents with my competitors, BMW and Ford.com, right? So those are the two models that under the settings section. If you check the first box that says limit external sharing. This is the Teams model. So the diamonds are existing controls elsewhere. So the first diamond on the left, it will check the Office groups control for allow guests to access groups. If no, it will deny you from inviting a B2B user to a team. You won't be able to add an external account to the team itself. But if you do allow them, then it'll be added in. But then when they're trying to access files, they will check to see SharePoint setting, the top one up there. So that's kind of, you can take a look at the diagram in detail to see, and you'll have the slides in the content to see how the decision making is done at each point. And it's a mix of the SharePoint controls and the Office groups controls. And this is a very cool model because they're not inventing any new controls of their own. In summary, some quick wins. Go home and do this. Tomorrow, turn on password hashing. If I haven't said that enough, please turn on password hashing. It is very important. Here's a white paper. We're arming you with the knowledge. Go argue with your ardent security opponent and defeat them. Let us know if you're successful. Turn on MFA for your admins. Please, absolutely. MFA for admins is free. It's not a premium, basic, anything feature. It's free. Turn on for your admins. I do not want to harp on the recent hack that came on the news recently, but the admin of a certain customer, the global admin didn't even have MFA on them. That's free, so just do it tomorrow. If you don't have PIM, PIM makes it easier, makes it more targeted, makes it you get MFA'd when you're about to do your job, otherwise you don't. It becomes just-in-time access and privilege. But if you don't have E5 and PIM, then at least turn on MFA permanently. Also tomorrow, go download the content pack. It's Power BI, it's linked here, it's beautiful. It's gonna take all your sign-in logs, pump them into Power BI. It's a button in Power BI you have to push, that's it, and immediately you get this beautiful map with all the locations of your last 30 days sign-ins. And this is very insightful because then you can notice who's logging into my tenant from Taiwan. I don't have anybody in Taiwan, right? Things like that. So you can ask these questions of these employees. Were you on vacation in Taiwan, right? And see if there's a leaked credential or if it's actually simply a travel or something like that. Next week?
Turn on Azure AD Connect, all of them. And enable group-based licensing. This is something that you can use dynamic groups with. Is anyone still managing licensing with PowerShell? Oh.
What do the rest of you do?
Yeah. And then also enable SSPR for a pilot set of users. This is really easy. You can scope it down. You can use this. And you can also use this with the password hash sync stuff in terms of doing identity protection. And then set up a SaaS app if you have one, if you haven't already. And that SaaS app should have a conditional access policy on it as well.
You can start with something as simple as whatever you have today. You know what? It's a SaaS app that you can't access from outside of Corp. Try and implement that with the conditional access policy and see if you can get the same effect. The conditional access policies now have this really cool feature called named locations. Anybody heard of named locations? Nice. You've been found. Good. No, you don't count. So now you can actually declare your IP ranges in separate named locations like head office, branch 1, branch 2, branch 7. And you can even create named locations for countries. So you can say, countries we have offices in, countries we have business in, countries we have no idea who goes there. And then you can say sensitive apps, if you're coming to a sensitive app and from a country we have no business there, deny access altogether, right? So can have those kinds of policies now. Next month, configure conditional access for SharePoint Online. So now that you've seen all the knobs and bells and whistles, start evaluating access to SharePoint. If you don't know, we just released in the spring a feature that allows you to have a restricted session into SharePoint Online. So that basically SharePoint can actually, right now it's across all of SharePoint, so it's a little bit broad stroked. But if you don't have that many sites, it might be good enough for you, where it will say when the user comes from these conditions, let's say, for example, untrusted computer or unknown computer and browser, then disable printing and saving and downloading. This way, you kind of restrict them to being in view-only mode, so that they can just look at the doc, but they can't save it or print it, so that they don't accidentally download the company's most sensitive Excel sheet and leave it in a hotel kiosk somewhere. So that's kind of what it's, again, about DLP. It's not about malicious employee tracking and finding and destroying. It's about employees having bad habits. And you're just trying to not discourage these bad habits by having enough controls around them that are thoughtful, that the button wouldn't even light up, rather than simply telling him, wag your finger and say, don't download this stuff. Simply the button wouldn't even light up. Configure B2B policies for SharePoint. As we mentioned, the controls, you saw them. We can actually combine B2B with conditional access. If you did not know, you can create a dynamic group based on user type equals guest. And you can actually put all your B2B users there. And then you can do things like MFA or MFA when they're coming to this sensitive app and so forth. Or block B2B users from accessing certain apps. It's only be for employees. If somebody accidentally invites someone to a B2B, I don't want them to get access. And then read this guide developed by our team for secure email deployment. It talks about how to securely deploy email and Exchange Online, what clients to use, how to configure conditional access policies for mobile apps, for Outlook 2016 and 2013 and so on. And
I think that's it. So we have some time for questions.
That's it?
Yep.
So
for those that are leaving, please do your evals and put in the comments what you want to see us talk about. We're going to continue to work with our customers on deployments, so we just kind of took a shot at what we think would be good. But if there's stuff you want to hear, please write in there. We promise to at least consider doing it next time.
And please, this is important. We want to hear from you guys. So you are deploying as much as we're deploying. We'd like to hear your questions and thoughts if you have any questions about what we presented or other areas. Sir.
I have a question. You started out saying that you were our friend and all you were going to talk about was free, and immediately after you mentioned the ADFS health and the health for the AD Connect. Just to understand that correct, that is not free, right?
Yeah, the health agents are not free. The sync and auth features are free. The health agents are not free, yes.
My second question is regarding in AD Sync, when you use the password sync and do single sign-on, you need to implement this password pass-through, right? Or can you just choose to do password sync and have single sign-on with that? Because you
yes, so you either do password hash sync and seamless SSO, or pass-through auth and seamless SSO. You can do password hash sync as a backup of pass-through auth, but they're not related. Like, you don't need pass-through auth with password hash sync. There are three features.
Okay, so you can have a single sign-on just doing password sync.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
That's actually one of my customers is doing. He was
back here.
We are doing password hash sync today. We are a federated organization. We are looking to move to managed auth as well. So one of the challenges that we saw was the amount of downtime that we need to take for the O365 platform in order to do that managed auth switch. When we are switching from federated to managed auth, we told that we have to take about 6 hours of 8 hours of downtime on the email platform or O365.
Good question. So you're saying you were told that there would be a downtime. So there is a possible downtime for when you're switching from ADFS to managed auth, and I don't know if it's 6 hours.
It depends on how many
seen is a couple of hours.
We are 100K objects.
100,000 objects. So there is one, and preferably you should do it on a weekend. But at the same time, it's not that it's going to manifest in that the users are going to not get email for 6 hours, is that at some point within the 6 hours, they're going to switch over.
It's an intermittent, yeah.
No, switch over. So at some point, they're going to have to enter the creds. It's just that you can't tell them when it's going to happen. It's somewhere between now and 6 hours from now. It's going to be his turn, and he's no longer going to be federated. And he's going to have to put in a password. You can't tell him. So the easiest is to do it on a weekend, like on a Sunday, and then tell him, come Monday morning, you're going to have to put in your password.
No, even if he is only switching over and his federation would still work during the time, during the 5 hours time, that should be fine. It's not an outage, right? Or would it be an outage for him? So soon after we switch over, the federation would stop working?
As soon as you switch over, for 15 minutes, there will be caches in the world somewhere that still think you're federated, and it will send you down to ADFS. Your ADFS is still there. Nobody turned it off, so the user will log in. But after 15 minutes, browser logins will all pick up that you're federated and will just, that you're managed and will no longer take you to ADFS. We'll ask you for username and password in the cloud. The 6 hours, for those of you who are wondering, are for ActiveSync and Outlook. They're the ones who take a time to realize that you're no longer federated. And then as we switch to modern auth, all these clients, all these things will become 15 minutes, just like the browsers.
My other question is for Mark, with regards to SSPR. We're doing it for the pilot set of users, and the feedback that we have received is the inability to change the text that appears on the change password screen. Is there an option?
Not today.
That was quick.
No?
No,
He said
but
not today.
that's good feedback.
All right, so yeah, that is one of it that's blocking us from doing.
Blocking you.
Yeah.
Okay, so see us after, or Ryan can help you right now, and we'll sort this right out.
Thank you.
Question in the back. Can you just create an MFA policy for
Sorry.
anyone with an admin role?
I'm sorry, say
Who's
that
asking
again?
the I'm sorry.
Can you just create an MFA policy so anyone with an admin role will automatically get MFA?
You have to apply it to users or groups, or you have to apply it on the user itself, right?
That's a good question, yes. So
Or PIM?
Like you can conditional access when
his point is you can't assign a conditional access policy to a role.
You can.
You have to.
Anyone with an admin role should get MFA,
So
their policy, conditional access policy.
you could, if you look at the MFA portal, you can find them by name and enable it on them. You are correct that there's no CA policy you can target to a role. You'd have to create a role that includes all your admins in it. A group, sorry. that
Another
includes all
admin grants admin access, but they don't turn on MFA for that person. So that's the issue.
I didn't hear.
I said, when somebody else grants an admin role to someone, they don't always remember to turn
Yes,
on
yes,
MFA.
I agreed, yes. And we've gotten the feedback that we should be able to assign conditional access policies to roles. We haven't gotten to it yet, yes. There was a question.
All right, number one, I think you already answered this one, but you still recommend hash even with ADFS, right?
Yes.
Okay. Second question is, we're syncing our entire directory. Are there any ramifications of after the fact? If we try to want to not sync, certain OUs or, right now we're syncing everything out of the box kind of thing.
Now you have to be careful when you're taking things out. Well, so that's all. So now if you're taking some, if you're going to do OU scoping, you got to make sure you're not scoping out something that's supposed to be in. But no, there's no ramifications other than they're going to get deleted. So you just got to make sure that they're supposed to come out. There was
First,
someone.
thanks a lot for your guys' a lot of useful information. And I kind of have like 3 questions. So
That's extra. First 2 are free.
my colleague's got a couple too. So it's
Good move. Yeah.
with respect to the self-service password reset. So what we have is we have 2 AD forests syncing through the same AD Connect instance via a trust. We want to, but the problem is these 2 forests have different password complexity policies. We read an article, and I just want to confirm this. Yeah, it's not good. But what we seem to say, it seems to say that it will respect the complexity rules even for the downstream forest. So that, in other words, if it will, so if one has password, 6 characters, one has password 8 characters, it'll respect the password complexity requirements for each of those forests. Like it'll come back with a success or not success message.
It's not aware of trust. What password write back will do, the feature is called password write back, the one that writes the password back.
Right.
It will chase to the forest where the account's credential came from.
Right, which will be,
It could be,
it'll be the trusted domain, right? Like,
so If all your passwords are coming out of one forest, and there's just a trust, that is going to respect the forest that is syncing the accounts out of. But some people have it such that, no, the account information is coming from this forest, but this is an exchange forest. It's only got mailbox, GAL information, but it doesn't have account information. It will chase the connector that provides the user account equals enabled,
Right.
and it will go to that forest and set the password there, and that's it. It will just follow one forest. It's not going to compare forests and say, oh, let me check both policies. It will just write in one place. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay, so second, consistency GUID, instead of using the other GUID there. So, because we had that exact situation. We just acquired a company. We've got 2 forests. That's how we ended up where we are. And they've told us, no, we're not going to make people move yet, but it's going to, for sure, it's going to happen like you've described. So if I'm using the consistency GUID as the identifier there, if I move somebody from one forest to the other, then everything would move with them then, so they would still think that same account is just in a different domain then. Is that what I heard you say?
Different object GUID.
It'll be a different object GUID, but the consistency GUID would...
So the ADM tools, whatever, ADM migration tool, ADMT, they will take the object, copy all the attributes they can.
Right.
Some things don't make sense, like the USN change number or whatever will not be the same. And it will try to preserve the object SID history, the object SID in the SID history. But it cannot copy the object GUID. It will just get a new GUID from the new domain controller, from the new forest, and that will be it. And that's the one attribute that AD Connect by default uses.
But for everything that it's using in the Office 365 tenant and Azure and everything, it should recognize it as the same user then?
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. And then, what was the other one? Oh, okay, so you had that one as well too, where you force somebody to register there. Now, can that be set like when the user, like first time they hit our SharePoint page or something, that if they're not registered, that it would prompt them to do it at that point?
It's any sign-in into Azure AD, they would be prompted.
Okay, so, and could that then, the registration information then be synced with like an identity management system somewhere else? Because what we have right now is we have another system that kind of requires the same thing. I don't want to point people to 2 different places for this, but I would like to be able to force them here to do the registration and then send that information over the identity system, and then the identity system will not force them to register then.
So today you can only do it the way you just described, meaning force registration on the way to SharePoint, which is, you can have a campaign that says, hey, tomorrow go to SharePoint online. We have a new SharePoint site for you. Click here. And then under the covers, they don't know that you've set up the registration enforcement. So it's going to stop them on their next login, no matter where, but it's going to be SharePoint. And then say, give me your email or phone number or whatever.
Right.
Then you can read it from us using PowerShell.
Okay.
So you can use it from us using Azure AD PowerShell, and then put in your other system. You can't do the opposite, which is go register in my other system, and then get the information and stuff it into Azure AD. Not all the SSPR and MFA attributes are exposed right now. We're working on those APIs, but they're not ready right now.
Yeah, because right now we do it the other way, and we actually use it, the carrot is internet access. You don't get internet access unless you go and do the registration. But it doesn't apply to external users and external IDs and everything. I don't want to have 2. But anyway, those are great questions, great answers. Thank you, guys.
Sure.
Want to try someone else?
I may have missed or misunderstood your reasoning for recommending ADFS and password hash sync together.
So password hash sync underneath ADFS, what allows you to do is if your ADFS goes down. So the #1 reason people have problems with ADFS is you're on the hook for high availability. So here you are on Office 365, Microsoft Cloud, beautiful stuff, and yet if one network engineer on your side fumbles one thing on the load balancer, everybody's down. All this cloud stuff didn't help you whatsoever, right? So that's the part. So password hash sync allows you to have an underlying fallback methods, as the earlier person was asking. You can't just switch to it instantaneously. It takes a few hours to take effect. But that's the language we're talking about, is if you've got an outage in ADFS, it's going to take days to fix. Data center goes down, or the Pythia
Non-Petra
hack, whatever it's called, ransomware attack is, and you need to turn off your DCs, need to take down ADFS for whatever reason, there's a malware running around in your DMZ, then you can fall back to it, clean up your stuff, take 2-3 days to clean up your stuff, and then come back and switch to federated and continue.
And
That's what we're talking about.
And you also get the leak credential report, which is insanely valuable as well.
You also get what?
The leak credentials report.
So if you did have an ADFS outage and you didn't know how long it was going to be down, it would take too long to then sync your passwords and turn on passwords?
Yes. Well, it'll
Depends on how many users you have.
How big are you? Do you know how many people are you?
About 10,000.
So 10,000 would take you a couple of hours just to get the password in the cloud. And then switch over to another 2 hours to get the ADFS switch
So
over
to
to
me, it's
that.
kind of a gray area. There
Yeah.
could be an advantage.
But this is why we're saying, if you just have them in the cloud all the time,
Yeah.
we can tell you other things like leak credential reports and other things like that.
Okay.
We can do things for you, for example, we're building something, well, it doesn't need password hashing, but we're building something called the banned password list. We can tell you if your users have really crappy passwords on-prem.
Based on the hash that you have?
Based on the hashes we see, we can match them to the hashes of known bad passwords and stuff like that.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
No problem. And over there, yes.
Yeah. Hello. In ADFS, it is possible to configure an alternate login ID, just in case the UPN is not the same as email and we want the user to.
You have my condolences, yes, continue.
to
That's
use
correct.
both. Okay. If suppose we don't want to use ADFS, is this possible to configure in the new pass-through authentication?
The
to
new
not-
pass-through authentication
They just
alternative.
announced.
I thought it did not
this week.
support it yet.
I'm not sure, I don't know.
Yeah. It is now? Now it is? Okay, so pass-through auth does support alternative login ID. So yes,
Oh, okay.
According to him.
according to
Okay, I
the
will
strange
check.
man in the front row.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
But that's the kind of thing that we documented. Like he has a good point. Like basically, I think it's one of the things that they were trying to fix for GA. So look for the new announcement about PTI.
Yes,
I think
I will look. I'll check just a few months ago when it was in preview and
Yep.
was not possible at that time.
A couple questions. We have a case of a few users who they have an on-premise AD account, but they don't have a on-premise or domain joined PC, and we have our passwords synced up to Azure. The password never expires attribute in Azure is set to false, and we found that if we set it to true, it only stays true when we until we do a full sync or until the person resets their password. I was wondering if there's a way to globally set password never expire and keep it to true.
Not right now. So password hash sync is highly driven from on-prem. Our original design was that we will sync the passwords unexpiring ever so that we never expire before on-prem,
Right.
right? Because that creates a bad situation where the user gets prompted by Office 365 to change his password, he does, and then his password on-prem is still fine, and then he changes it on-prem 2 days later and he forgot which one is which.
Right.
So we didn't want to have that situation. We've had this feedback where customers are saying, I have some cloud-only users. I provisioned them from on-prem, but then they're on the cloud forever. They never come back to on-prem. And I've noticed that their passwords never expire. So we're working on making it such that when you set the domain password age, you can do it from PowerShell today, but it doesn't apply to password hashing. You can say for contoso.com that the password age is 30 days, 90 days, whatever you want, but it doesn't apply to password hashing. We're working on making it apply to password hashing, but it's like next year.
Okay.
So, but yes, we're aware of this problem and we're trying to address it for that scenario specifically.
Okay. And then
There is just a side note, there is a flag, there is a command that I can give you that can make AD Connect sync the fact that passwords are expired. So today, password hashing does not sync expired passwords because it thinks they're temporary. They're going to be changed. I'll just sync the real one when it gets changed, which means that when you create a user the first time, he has no password in the cloud until they log in on-prem first. So imagine that user of yours, if his first login was a SaaS app, he's busted until you give him a password on-prem. So we're kind of forcing them to come on-prem. So there's a command that I can give you that will allow us to sync that first expired password and force them to change their password in the cloud.
okay. Yeah.
But that does not set password age, just so you know.
Okay. And then regarding the Power BI content pack for,
Sign-ins?
I'm assuming it'll show SSPR registrations and SSPR resets for the
It's a
last
different
30 days.
pack, yeah, but there's a pack for SSPR, yes.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if it's published yet.
I think it's, we can sync offline. I think it's, Danya's not here, but we can find out.
Ryan?
That's okay.
She's busy.
Well, we only have like a minute left.
Let's talk offline after
talk
this.
offline.
She may know if it's published or not. Yeah.
Let's get this last one, then you have a question, and we'll,
Yes.
go ahead.
When I invite a user in the portal for B2B, the user doesn't need to accept the invitation. Like he can automatically access the apps and the apps portal. Like he doesn't need to accept the mail.
You want that, or you're saying this is
I
what
want
happens?
that, but when I do it programmatically with PowerShell, if I don't send the mail to the user, he's not able to access it. Is there a way to do it?
So you want to not send him an email?
Yes, it's like 2 tenants that I own, and I don't want the users to be aware of the change.
So the B2B invitation model by default will not require redemption only in one case. If you, the inviting user, are a member of the other tenant. So what you can do is invite one guy over, redeem him, make him a guest inviter, use his context to run your script, and then your script, when it invites anybody else from that tenant, they will be auto-redeemed already. They won't have to click on a link, and then you know from PowerShell, from the Graph API, you can suppress the email, so they don't even have to click on the email.
Thank you.
No problem.
All right, we'll stick around if there's any other questions here, but I think that's it.
We are out of time. Thank you all very much.